Hi, my name is John Burks, and I am a financial analyst. And what I like to do is show you a series of videos that goes through different types of applications and softwares that any organization or company can use to improve their business processes as well as their data analytics. Now, the primary softwares or tools that I will be using, the first video will contain information on how to use Alteryx, which is a business analytical tool. It's the application that we're looking at right now. And then I will go into information on how you would visualize your data once the output is generated in a popular and powerful dashboard software called Tableau. And then we'll get into some R statistics. Um, I'll demonstrate how to use R statistics on some very popular key metrics that you can use to analyze data for your firm and organization. Okay. Now this is Alteryx. It's a very powerful tool. It's a business analytical tool that you can use to manipulate your data, as well as filter your data, as well as formulate your data. Okay. Now, when you open the application, okay, what I'm using right now is this trial period that I'm using is the company allows you a 14-day free trial period to see if you like the application, to kind of test drive it and to see if you want to go ahead and purchase the actual license. Okay, so now when you look at the application that I have in front of you, now this is what they call the actual canvas. Okay, you can drag items into here, right? Okay, you can drag items in, you know, you know, okay. And if you want to just delete that item that you put there, you can delete it. And up here, there's a bunch of different tools. Each one of these tools can do different things based on what you're trying to accomplish, okay? And then, of course, you have a way to save your data in the file menu, different other options to view the data, as well as to add different functions to the actual canvas, right? And over here gives you information regarding the workflow that you've ran, runtime, okay, and it goes back to the actual canvas. And then down here is what they call the actual result window. So when you press run, it gives you the results of the information that you ran through, as well as it gives you information if there's any type of errors, where the file was being read from, where the file was going or being outputted to, and so forth. Okay. Now, what I'm doing today is I got some information online for a fictitious company, and what I wanted to show you is how you can take data from any company. This is particular data for sales for a company that I found online. It's not real data, and I want to show you how you can analyze this data and generate different types of outputs. Okay, so when I click on this icon here, this is your actual input. This input, you can select different types of file types you can pull from databases by this drop-down menu here. Okay, and this here lets me know what actual tab from the Excel spreadsheet that I am pulling the data from. And as we look at the information that is being brought in, and as you can see, you can see as I drag this over, you can see what you're bringing in. Okay, now this is only going to preview the first 100 records. You would actually have to drop a browse tool onto the canvas, press run, and then the entire output would be not saved, it would output to a browse tool to where you can actually view your data. And then if you wanted to output that data, you can output the data from what we call a browse tool. And if you wanted to actually output the data to a specific file, what you would do is bring your drag your output icon in, connect your file input to the output or whatever workflow that you created, and then specify where you want the information to go. Okay. And in a lot of these outputs, you will see in this, I'll show you um, as we proceed further with this presentation. Okay. So going back to the input. So on this input that I downloaded online, what this has is the segment for the company, their segment, the country that they have sales in, the product name, how many units were sold, the manufacturer price, sales price, gross sales, any type of discounts, and then this is the actual sales when they include the discount. They got your cost of goods sold, the profit, and then the date of the actual sales, date of sales. Okay. And then this other information here I included to what I did was I broke down the date into the month, the the month number, the month name, and also the year, so I can actually manipulate the data into to manipulate the data in the Alteryx workflow. Now on this input here, these are all my overhead. Okay, I have your expenses, like things that you are funds that were spent on technology, and this is all by month again. And as you can see, the amounts are the decimal place is carried over too far, but there's a tool inside of the workflow that allows you to round these numbers up. So I got my utility expenses, I got professional fees, maintenance, marketing, and then again, it's only the first 100 records. Okay. So the whole goal of this is to generate an output that shows a profit and loss statement, a balance sheet, some financial analysis as far as looking at horizontal analysis and vertical analysis, as well as doing horizontal and vertical analysis on the balance sheets. And also I would like to generate some type of statistical analysis of the data. Okay. So when you look at the canvas again, this is what we call a macro. And what this does is this compresses the actual workflow that is going on behind the scene. This is very versatile because what it allows you to do is I can take this macro here, and if I wanted to save it, I don't have to save this very large and elaborate workflow that's going on behind the scene. I can just have the workflow compressed down into this little macro here, and it's more versatile and easier to use with other types of inputs, and I'll show you that in a few seconds here. So again, this macro compresses your workflow to make it more versatile. It makes it more clean and easier to allow other people to use. Okay. So now when you right click on the macro, it goes into the actual workflow. So all this is going on behind the scene. Okay. So all of this is captured in that one little icon, and we'll go through a lot of this information. So the square boxes that you see are what they call containers. You can drag your inputs or inputs from your tools, which is up here, into the containers. And what's good about the containers is that you can close it if you want it to be cleaner. If you want to disable it so that it doesn't run, you can click that to disable it. And then if you want to open it back up, you just click on it to open it back up. Okay. Now, I'm going to slide this over here so we can look at what's going on behind the scene. Okay. So when you the first container, okay, this is the input for one of the inputs on the macro on the other screen that I've shown you, okay? So this is the actual sales data that's coming in, the sales data that's coming in for the fictitious company. This is the overhead or operating expenses that's coming in for the organization. And then down here, I didn't include this as an input to the macro um, on the other canvas. I just added an input for the balance sheet items to just bring into the workflow behind the scene. Okay, so as this goes through, this is what I'm doing here is I'm taking each, I'm combining the sales in the data, and I'm breaking this down into the different segment sales. Okay, and in this container down here, I'm taking the data from the input and generating the revenues and gross profit. Okay, and this container here, I'm taking my expenses, I'm creating rows and formulas for my expenses, and then this container here, I'm taking those expenses and breaking it down by year, 2014 and 2013 expenses, so that way I can have a profit and loss statement for both years. Okay, so everything is carried forward. My revenues is carried over to this container here, so I can do my horizontal analysis or my year-over-year income statement analysis. Oh, I'm sorry, my year-over-year income statement. This is going to bring in both my 2013 and my 2014 income, as well as my expense items. Okay. So this container here is going to generate my profit and loss statement. And all these tools are doing the work for me. I pretty much, if I open one of the tools, to the right, what you'll see, takes a second for it to open, it shows you how I am formulating that particular tool to generate the actual column name or field name, okay? And that's going on with all these tools. Like this would be a formula tool. This here, it takes your data that is horizontal and makes it vertical. The select tools here allows you to pick certain fields and select certain items out. This is what we call the union tool, that you can bring several data outputs in to one tool without joining on a specific field or character. This here allows me to convert my uh, date, a date string, a date time format into a particular string. So for instance, if my date is September 1 of 2013, if I just wanted to make it 2013 year and then say the month January, this tool allows me to reformat the actual date. Okay, so going back to the next container. Okay, now this container is creating my margins for 2014. Okay, and when I'm creating the margins, I use these formula tools to create the margins for 2013 or 2013, and this is 2014. Okay, excuse me. This one should be 2013 margins, and this one is actually 2014. And how I know this, when I looked at I looked at the container, right? So the container, I labeled it a certain thing, but when I look at the actual formula tool, I can see the date that the date that I'm looking at is 2014. So I just had the labels in the wrong container, and I fixed that just now. Okay. And that's the good thing about Alteryx is where it's so visible and so versatile. Where if you can pick up on certain items that you might have entered incorrectly right away by just seeing the information in front of you. Okay. And because as you can see, there's a lot of information, a lot of tools that are going on in this model to create what we're trying to create. Okay, now this is the balance sheet items that I'm bringing through from the original input. And now this is my horizontal analysis. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at year over year revenues and other income statement items. Okay, now once that is done, okay, so all of those different containers, they are going to output to an Excel spreadsheet. And I'll go over that in another video, okay? So what I also included in this workflow is a statistical test on the data that I'm running through, okay? So Alteryx has what you call a data investigation tool, which is this tool right up here. And there's all different analysis that you can use, that you can do with your data, okay? So for instance, right now, this is a field summary of my data. So it takes, I enter the data that I enter the inputs that I want to look at to get an output of what type of characters or data types that I'm working with. Because when you're dealing with statistics, you have to make sure that you are using the right data types for the types of tests that you are working with. Like for instance, a chi-square, or excuse me, for example, it's kind of, you can't do descriptive statistics on typically categorical data because it's meant for continuous and say discrete data, because you can get means and mediums and ranges and maxes from continuous or discrete data. So you can do more descriptive statistics with that. Whereas your categorical data, you tend to do your frequency tables and your charts. Okay, so this lets me know what kind of data that I'm working with. It gives me a summary. Okay, it gives me like standard deviation, gives me min and max, as you can see down here. Okay, it gives me the percent of items that are missing, and so forth. Okay, this tool here is the distribution analysis. So it lets me, I pick an item that I wanted to look at how my data is distributed. It allows you to look at the distributions in the normal, the log normal, the Weibull, and the gamma. So it lets you know how your data is distributed. And when you do this, the output gives you like p-values and other statistical outputs that allow you to tell you how the data is distributed. This is an association, okay, where it lets me look at the Pearson correlation factor. And right now I'm looking at to see how my units sold and my sell price are correlated. You can also use the Spearman, which is used typically is used when your data is not normal, and the Pearson is used when your data is normal. And then this is, I'm bringing in, this is my field summary again. And I'm doing the field summary on my 2014 revenues. The one above is the field summary for the 2013 data. Okay. This is my frequency table on the categorical data. So right now I'm looking at the segment and the country. to see the frequency of the count of the segment as well as the country. And down here, I also have a contingency table, which includes a chi-square on the categorical variables, segment and product. And then on this one here, this is another macro inside of a macro. I created this to show that how versatile you can be with Alteryx. So I wanted a specific t-test, and I found that I didn't have a specific tool in Alteryx to actually do that, so I created one mathematically myself. And so what I have is I have behind the scene in this macro, it's looking at two variables, and it's doing a paired t-test, and then from there it's going to generate my t-value, so I can then look at a t-table to obtain my p-values to see if the p-value is significant against if the p-value is less than or greater than my level of significance of 0.05. Okay, but this here, when I output it, it gives me the output for that calculation for my paired t-test on the variables that I picked to go through it. Now, once that is done, I have it going through what we call Alteryx has what we call forecasting, and this is the ARIMA forecasting, which looks at the rolling average, okay, and it gives you an output. And in this particular tool, what you can do is you can extrapolate it, or you can extend it how many months you want it to go out. Like for instance, if you want to see your projections 6 months out, you can choose 6 months out. If you wanted to go, say, a year out, it'd take your values from the prior months and it will extend it out the period of time you would like it to go out. And this is the time series forecast, which is more of an exponential smoothing, and that as well allows you to show how many periods you would like to forecast out in time. And it also, these tools also allow you to do is it gives you your confidence level. If you want a 95% confidence level, it'll give you the range for the 95% confidence level. And I also show that you can also choose even lower confidence levels. Like right now, I have one for an 80% confidence level. And this other container here is my regression analysis. And what I did is I dropped this tool from the predictive analysis. So what I'm doing now is I went from a descriptive analysis with the summaries and the field summary tool, and now I'm getting into my predictive analysis with the regression model that I created in this workflow. And right now what I'm looking at is I'm looking at the profit and then the cost of goods sold to see if there's any correlation with the actual revenue. So I just pick these variables to actually see if there's any relationship. And well, I shouldn't say there should be, but once you run the output, you'll see if the values are if they're related or not. Okay, and then down here I pick the stepwise. So what the stepwise does is for the variables that I pick, it's going to compare it to and then the model is going to use the stepwise to compare what I use as the regression analysis to what it's going to pick as the regression analysis. And then what it does, it scores the two models to see which ones is the better fit or which variables are the better fit for the model. And then down here is the logistics regression. Now with logistics, you have to make sure you have a variable of either yes or no, or because remember with logistics, it's probability, and probabilities can only be between 1 and 0. So what I did was I had to create a yes and no field with this formula tool here. So what I'm doing is I looked at the segment and I put government segment as yes, and then all the other segments as no, to kind of predict the probabilities of the segment on the future revenues for the company. Okay. Now, as you can see, there's a bunch of these little binocular-looking tools, and what this does is, as I was saying in the beginning of the call, or the beginning of the presentation, you can output your data to an actual output, which are these outputs over here. Okay. But these browse tools allows you to output your data into the tool, and it doesn't output it to a specific file or table or anything of that nature. What it does, it kind of houses your data for you to review it, because without the browse tool, you can only look at a certain percent of your data without the tool. But this tool here allows you to view all your data coming in. And then if you want to output your data from the browse tool, all you do is you click on this little icon down here, and then you can save it to wherever area that you want to save it. Okay. Now, as we go further, here is the last container of all the outputs that I will output to an Excel spreadsheet. It's the same Excel spreadsheet, and these different icons will go to separate tabs in the same workbook. Now, there is a trick that you have to do in order for that to work. You have to bring in what we call, so you have to go to your tools up here, and then you have to go to the developer tool, and you have to enter your block until done tool, which is this tool right up here. Okay. Now, what this tool does is it brings in your data, it opens up the spreadsheet, and then it doesn't allow it to, it fills that particular tab, and then when that tab is done, and then it goes to the next tab and so forth. Because without that tool, if you don't do that, it's going to give you an error message that the workbook is currently in process. So that tool eliminates that error and allows you to input data to the same workbook to different tabs in the same run for that particular model. So over here, I have my revenue outputs, okay, and income outputs going to these different tabs here. This is my expenses for 2014 and 2013. This is my balance sheet outputs, okay, which is the balance sheet itself or the horizontal analysis. This is my data prep and review, which is the field summary for 2014 and 2013. This is the data analysis, as well as the statistics, some statistics, which is the frequency tables, the t-test that I created and then this is the distribution, the test the data for normality. And of course, I have some more statistics, the chi-square test along with the frequency, the t-test again on the different year, and then the correlation, the Pearson correlation. And over here, I have my forecasting and projections. This is the regression analysis. This is the ARIMA, and of course, this is the time series forecast. Now, here's the thing. Some of these outputs will not input correctly to an Excel spreadsheet with the correct data or the correct formatting. So for instance, some of these tools, for example, like the regression analysis and the logistic analysis report will not, it will export to the Excel file, but it only puts the first line and it doesn't give you all your formatted data correctly. So that's why you have to render some of your outputs with this tool. It's called the reporting tool, which is in the, we'll go back to our toolbar up here, and you go to the reporting tool, and then you pick the render, and it allows you to actually output the report to a file location that you want. And once you open it up, drag this over, and then drag this over, and it allows you to it allows you to output your data to the area that you would like to send the data to, okay? And there's all different ways of changing the configurations of your output. And as you can see with this particular container, it's all the reporting data. So I got my contingency table, I got my field summaries for 1 year, my frequency tables, my correlations, my field summary, my distribution analysis for the data, my linear logistics, and then my logistic regression, and then I have a test of means that I also have going out. Okay, so this was the first video in a series of videos that I will create to help people with Alteryx, because I believe Alteryx is a very powerful tool, very versatile, and with any organization could benefit from using this tool. It does take a little bit of time to learn the process and the different functions of the different tools, but once you get a grasp, understanding of the different tools and the concept of what it's trying to do, you're pretty much putting your thought and your ideas onto the canvas and the workflow into what you feel is a logical way to produce the output of what you have in mind to present or have shown to whoever is viewing your information. Okay, so that's the end of this presentation, and I will go to the next presentation in the next video, showing you the actual output for the different data types or data streams of my workflow. Thank you.